Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are diving right into some absolutely dramatic shifts we're seeing in Australian political polling. We're going to use Pauline Hanson's latest Sky News interview as our map to figure out exactly what is going on, why it's happening, and what it actually means for the broader political landscape. So let's jump straight in.
To make sense of this shifting landscape, we'll break things down into 5 key areas: the bombshell poll results, the budget backlash, the cost of living crisis, One Nation's policy platform, and finally, the shifting political dynamics.
Let's start right at the top with Section 1, the bombshell poll results and a dramatic shift in primary support.
Right after the Treasurer's recent budget, the Roy Morgan poll results dropped. And well, they revealed something pretty extraordinary. One Nation surged to a staggering 32% in primary support. That means they literally overtook Labour, who are sitting at 28.5%, and the Coalition trailing way back at 16.5%. The Greens are even further back at 11.5%. Now, just as a quick reminder, in the Australian system, primary votes reflect a voter's absolute first preference before any distribution happens. So having a minor party leapfrog both establishment parties in primary votes, that's an absolute political earthquake. It signals a potentially catastrophic fracturing of the major party base. To put that 32% surge into perspective, you just need to think about the number 6. 6%. That was the primary vote One Nation secured at the very last election. So leaping from roughly 6% all the way up to an estimated 32%, that highlights a massive, incredibly rapid migration of voter sentiment.
And this poll didn't just happen in a vacuum. It closely followed a massive victory for One Nation in the historically safe Farah by-election. They managed to secure a 40% vote share in an electorate that had been held tightly by the Coalition for 77 years. No small feat. That win cemented their second lower house seat. And according to political commentators from the interview, it really began building a sort of permission structure for voters. Basically, it started normalizing the idea of voting for a third party in lower house seats.
Okay, moving on to Section 2, the budget backlash and grievances over tax and relief.
During the interview, Pauline Hanson explicitly frames the recent budget as a form of communism. She argues that changes to things like negative gearing and capital gains tax unfairly target self-funded retirees and baby boomers. In her view, these are the folks who sacrificed, the ones buying second-hand clothes, skipping restaurant meals, just to build up their investments. And now, she argues, they're having that hard-earned wealth targeted for redistribution by the current government.
So how do the two sides stack up? Well, Labor's stated tax relief measures are aggressively countered by Hanson's narrative. The budget includes adjustments to negative gearing, capital gains, and family trusts, along with the broad $250 tax relief measure. But Hanson? She characterizes all of these as broken election promises. Instead, she claims the government is essentially executing a $15 billion personal tax grab and a $13 billion superannuation grab just to cover their unchecked spending.
A huge point of contention here revolves around one specific figure, $250. The government really touted this as relief for every Australian, but Hanson dismisses it completely as a political scam. She points out that it equates to less than $5 a week. She argues this is merely a cunning trap, the idea being if the opposition votes against it, the government can just run ad campaigns claiming they blocked the tax cut, all while everyday households continue to struggle.
That leads us perfectly into Section 3. The cost of living crisis, covering housing, inflation, and energy.
Highlighting the generational struggle we're seeing right now, Hanson points out a genuinely shocking metric about housing affordability. Historically, she notes, a house costs roughly 3 times a person's age. But today, she estimates it sits at 15 to 16 times a person's age. Young people are facing a ridiculously steep climb. On top of that, she strongly criticizes the government's 5% deposit scheme. She argues it doesn't actually help with affordability at all. Instead, it simply traps young buyers in severe mortgage stress right as interest rates are rising.
Furthermore, she directly links all this economic pain to specific government policies. Hanson cites mass migration as a tool the government uses to artificially prop up the GDP, which she argues simultaneously fuels domestic inflation. She also points the finger at net zero policies, calling them the primary driver of skyrocketing household electricity costs. And the human toll of all this? Well, according to the numbers she cited, we're looking at 50,000 small business insolvencies, plus the closure of over 1,400 industries and manufacturing operations under the current government.
Now let's look at Section 4, One Nation's policy platform and Hanson's proposed alternative.
As the Sky News interviewer rightly pointed out during the broadcast, trust in mainstream parliament is pretty much broken for a lot of Australians right now.
But here's the real challenge for One Nation. As they try to move from a minor protest vote to a major political player, they have to prove their own consistency and reliability to the electorate. The big question is, can voters actually trust them to deliver?
In response to that question of trust, Hanson points straight to her long-standing consistency. She lays out an explicit policy platform that is heavily focused on tangible economic changes. For starters, she wants to mobilize pensioners by allowing them to work unlimited hours without losing their benefits or healthcare cards. She's also proposing income splitting for taxes. Crucially, she advocates for entirely scrapping net zero targets and abolishing the Department of Climate Change altogether. Alongside that, she wants to remove solar and wind mandates on farmland to reduce energy costs and heavily prioritize domestic manufacturing.
Finally, we arrive at Section 5. Shifting political dynamics and the ripple effect on the coalition.
Mapping out the current policy overlap between the parties is absolutely fascinating. Right now, the coalition's Angus Taylor is reportedly proposing budget reply measures that closely mirror One Nation's long-standing platform. On migration, Taylor proposes sweeping cuts, while Hanson pushes a strict $130,000 cap. On welfare, Taylor is proposing scrapping access for non-citizens. That is a direct echo of Hanson's long-standing policy requiring an 8-year wait before granting citizenship and benefits.
What is so compelling here is that Hanson actually views this policy overlap not as a political threat, but as a total victory. She claims that the Farah by-election shock was a rude awakening. Essentially, it forced the major parties, specifically the coalition, to adopt her policies in a desperate bid to win back disaffected voters. She actively welcomes them jumping on board with her ideas, making it very clear that her real enemies are Labour, the Greens, and the Teal.
Which leaves us with a critical question to ponder as we wrap things up today. As the political establishment clearly scrambles to respond to these shifting voter sentiments and bombshell polls, what will the ultimate cost or benefit be for the future of Australian governance? Are we just watching a temporary protest vote, or is this the beginning of a permanent political realignment? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the data and keep learning.